Paul, for the audience that doesn't know, maybe quickly explain who this Draghi guy is.
Yeah, of course. So many of you will know him for what he was doing for Europe as the ECB president from 2011 to 2019. He was also prime minister of Italy for a short period of time. Italian prime ministers, they never last a very long time. And since then, he's kind of become a very influential public affairs person. He's there. He's talking, the Draghi report. We made many videos about that. But he's also just quite respected, I think, not only in the European community as a whole, from the left to the right, and federalists, non-federalists, but also by the federalists for many of his stances. And we'll see in this speech how federalist he actually is.
Yeah, it was actually quite exciting because I remember last year, was it last year? My God, 2 years ago, time goes so quickly. But when it was the elections, the parliament elections, and the commission was being formed, and who would be the head of the commission? And of course, it was Ursula von der Leyen at the end. I mean, the biggest chances were of her actually winning, and she did. But Draghi was thrown in there at one point where it could maybe even be Draghi as the commission president. But that, of course, didn't happen. And as you said, he's been massively influential ever since. And the main part really is the Draghi report from last year, where he's trying to show our leaders what we need to do in order to become competitive again. And it's a massive report. We did a video on it explaining all the different things we have to do, the green transition, etc., in order to finally get Europe moving again. But that's not the topic for today. Today, we're going to look at an actual speech he did yesterday. I think it was at a university. And it really stood out because I've never really seen Draghi go that hard on European federalism. So that's why it's quite interesting to see it. I mean, you've watched the speech, haven't you, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, it's raised eyebrows a bit everywhere. I mean, it was big news in France, all over the main media. They were talking about Draghi. It died down quickly because, international politics, is fast changing these days. But I think a lot of people respect this guy, and this speech was listened to by not only people but world leaders, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're going to do today is we're going to watch parts of the speech, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. So we will hear a lot about Draghi today, but really it was very interesting. And let's get straight into it.
We face a United States that, at least in its current posture, emphasizes the costs it has borne while ignoring the benefits it has reaped. It is imposing tariffs on Europe, threatening our territorial interests, and making clear for the first time that it sees European political fragmentation as serving its interests. We face a China that controls critical nodes in global supply chains and is willing to exploit that leverage, flooding markets, withholding critical inputs, forcing others to bear the cost of its own imbalances.
I'm going to stop it right there already, Paul. I mean, that wasn't a long segment here, but I thought it was very interesting because he mentioned the United States, which makes sense. We've had a lot of issues the last couple of months with the US, but I think it's also quite interesting he mentions China. And what do you think he's referring to here when he talks about critical nodes in the global supply chain and exploiting us? I mean, what is he referring to here?
I mean, there's only one thing he'd be referring to, right? It's China's market domination when it comes to exports, right? China exports everything. You've seen it all made in China, right? Now, very controversial, but the cars, they're coming also from China. Germany's not very happy about this. And crucially, how competitive they've been on the global market, right? So to give you a bit of an introduction in Chinese economics, it's very simple. They devalue their currency in order for their exports to be more competitive worldwide, right? If you devalue your own currency, that means your own people, right? They're paid a bit less. They can have less power in the world. But it also means that anyone who's buying your products is going to buy it for cheaper. And we've seen this with cars, with manufacturing. Now we're seeing it with the green transition as well, right? Solar power is becoming super cheap because Chinese companies
That's unfair competition, right? It's massively unfair
competition. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it was a debate before. Is China devaluing their currency? They're definitely doing it. They're definitely devaluing their currency. And it's why so many people are really angry at China about this.
Yeah, no, interesting. So let's continue.
This is a future in which Europe risks becoming subordinated, divided, and deindustrialized at once. And a Europe that cannot defend its interests will not preserve its values for long. The transition from this order to whatever lies next will not be easy for Europe. We will face a long period in which interdependencies persist, even as rivalries intensify. We remain heavily dependent on the United States for energy, technology, and defense. China supplies over 90% of our rare earth imports and dominates the global solar and battery value chains that underpin our green transition.
Like you said, Paul, huh?
In this period, the best path for Europe is the one it is now pursuing: to conclude trade agreements with like-minded partners that offer diversification, and to deepen our position in supply chains where we are already critical. This is where Europe has power today. In 2023, the European Union was the world's largest exporter and importer of goods and services, with imports from the rest of the world totaling 3.6 trillion euros. It's also the largest trading partner of more than 70 countries. And we hold critical positions in several strategic industries. European firms control 100% of extreme ultraviolet lithography, the technology required to make advanced chips.
That's ASML, I guess.
We produce half the world's commercial aircraft. We design the engines that power the vast majority of global shipping.
Man, honestly, Paul, I'm really happy to finally hear someone like bigging up Europe a little bit, because in my feeling, everyone keeps on talking about how dependent we are on the US, right? And it's quite nice to hear him say that there's actually things or areas where we're very strong at too. And I think he really mentioned ASML here. And I mean, what I've been looking into, without ASML, like advanced chips technology, which would just not be possible because the chips are created there. I mean, not the chips are not created there, the machines are created there that create the chips, if I understand it correctly, right? I mean, what do you think? I mean, do you have a similar sentiment, or isn't it nice hearing that for once?
Dude, finally someone saying it, right? It's, you know me, I'm very pessimistic, but I think, yeah, it's good to have someone say what needs to be said, right? We are powerful. We've got 450 million consumers. You know, we've got a massive, stable market at the heart of the global economy. We've got massive institutions, the WHO, right? We've got not only that, the WTO. So they're like headquartered in Switzerland. There's a lot of institutions that we've helped build with the Americans that we still care about. And you know, if we still care about it, we can keep them alive, especially in this world that's becoming multipolar. I mean, what do you think? I mean, I know you're the more optimist one, which is why I asked.
Well, I actually also looked into finance a little bit. I mean, I know you are more the expert in that area, but what I understand is that there's also some strengths Europe has there. So for one, Europeans hold, or European companies and governments hold, a lot of US government debt, which gives us potential leverage. I saw another thing that I would love to hear your take on, is that if we change the invoicing and settlements away from the USD towards the euro, then we could also pressure US monetary dominance. I guess it would also hurt us, but that's another thing that we have. And we also have SWIFT, which is headquartered in Belgium. So even in the finance part, we have some leverage, don't we?
We have a ton of leverage. But we need to be able to use it. And not only that, we need to build our own markets, right? As you say, right? For example, remaking our invoicing and settlements from USD to euro is massive. But we need to give people access to euros, right? If we just transition from USD to euro now, the problem is that everyone's going to start buying euros without a proper debt mechanism. And you know where I'm going to go with this.
Of course, yeah.
Of course, I'm going to say it. We need euro bonds, right? We need euro bonds.
But if there was a poster boy for euro bonds, man, it would be you.
It's the only thing I could talk about, I swear. Actually, I was recently with Lambertus, and I gave him a 1 hour 30 lecture on why euro bonds should be a thing. So If anyone knows about Eurobonds, number 2 would be Lambertus. But yeah, Eurobonds would increase Euro liquidity and make it easier for us to buy it, make it easier for Indians, for Chinese, for even Americans to buy euros. And yeah, absolutely, we've got a ton of leverage there.
Yeah, man, you need to convince the skeptical countries. I mean, even here in the chat, the Dutch don't want Eurobonds, true, and
they don't want it.
No, the Germans don't either, I think. But yeah,
it's easy for the French, that they want to get out of their debts, so it's easier.
Yeah, but I think, and yeah. So I think there is definitely. It was nice to hear Draghi say it. He speaks with a lot of confidence, right? And that we're not this unpowerful bloc. We are actually, we have leverage, and it's great that we start using it. So,
in this context, it's wrong to think of trade agreements primarily in terms of growth. Their purpose now is strategic, to strengthen our position and realign our relationships now that trade and security no longer fully overlap. But this is a holding strategy. It's not a destination. Individually, most European countries are not even middle powers capable of navigating this new order by forming coalitions, each bringing distinctive assets to the table, whether raw materials, technological niches, or strategic geography. But collectively, we have something greater: scale, wealth, political culture, and 75 years of building the institutions of a common project. Of all those now caught between the United States and China, Europeans alone have the option to become a genuine power themselves. So we must decide. Do we remain merely a large market subject to the priorities of others? Or do we take the steps necessary to become one power?
Man, honestly, Paul, it feels like he watched the video we released yesterday.
Literally.
Yeah, because it's quite interesting. He even mentions that the middle powers are, well, not capable of going at it by themselves. And I think that doesn't just rely on, or he doesn't only mean European powers, right? There's lots of other middle powers all over the world, which cannot no longer rely on the US, are being squeezed by China. And that almost goes back to the video we created yesterday of like, Europe shouldn't just only think of EU countries. Of course, that's the core, that's the EU, and that's maybe something more too. But we should also be building all of these connections with, Canada, Japan, South Korea, Australia. And we talk about our video that this could be like a tier 4, like the outer layer around the European Union that we can build connections with. And I think that's what Draghi is talking about here.
Yeah. I think so too. I think there's two things here. Number one, goosebumps, right? It's great. We have someone who's high up, who has influence, who's actually saying the things that we've been saying for years. And it's great. It's great. And it's not just us who's been thinking this, right? We've seen reports. Europeans want to federalize. Or federalize is a strong word, but they want to work better together. So I think a lot of people are going to be really appreciating these comments, especially those who have been watching our channel for a very long time.
Yeah.
As for a tiered EU, yeah, I mean, it's great. It's almost as if, America's creating all these quote unquote refugee countries that were part of the old system axed on America. And they need some kind of new system, which is strong, which has institutions that are not fragile, and for all we critique the EU, myself included, for all I critique it to be slow.
You're French after all, Paul,
I am French. Has to be done.
Yeah,
but we both critiqued it a lot, but actually it's very stable. And so these countries, they need a new access to go around. And so it makes total sense to have a new way to integrate these countries into our sphere, into a common marketplace, which is based on laws and rules, as Macron said, at Davos.
Yeah, I think multiple said it. I think the strongest one there was Carney, right? Carney really hit the nail on the head. Yeah,
he was good.
Saying that we need like a community of middle powers. And, that. Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how that works next to NATO, next to the United Nations. Maybe we need to set up some new form of that. Who knows? But those are all interesting discussions to be had.
A question for you, Lambertus. Which countries should be at the core? Or which countries do you think would be at the core?
Man, I love this question. So we're definitely going to get back to it, because a bit later in his speech, he does really talk about like a sort of tiered EU. And let's save that question for then. because
All right.
also the video we created yesterday got a lot of feedback, critical feedback about the so-called E6, the big 6 European countries going at it in a higher tier. But let's pause it and get to that later.
But let us be clear. Grouping together small countries doesn't automatically produce a powerful bloc. This is the logic of confederation, the logic by which Europe still operates in defense, in foreign policy, in fiscal matters. This model does not produce power. A group of states that coordinates remains a group of states, each with a veto, each with a separate calculus, each vulnerable to being picked off one by one.
Yes, that's what's happening.
Power requires Europe to move from confederation to federation. Where Europe has federated on trade, on competition, on the single market, on monetary policy, we are respected as a power and negotiate as one. We see this today in the successful trade agreements being negotiated with India and Latin America, where we have not, on defense, on industrial policy, on foreign affairs, we are treated as a loose assembly of middle-sized states to be divided and dealt with accordingly. And where trade and security intersect, our strengths cannot protect our weaknesses. A Europe...
Oh, I think we lost the stream.
We face
Sorry,
a
one
powerful
second. It
bloc.
just failed. 1 second. Where were we, Paul? Do you remember?
Yes, I had it up here. And where trade and security intersect, I think. Something like
Yeah.
that.
Separate calculus, each vulnerable to being picked off one by
Yeah,
one.
that's where we were about. Yeah.
Power requires Europe to move from confederation to federation.
A bit further. Sorry, everyone.
Where Europe has
Think about here, maybe.
set, our strengths cannot protect our weaknesses. A Europe unified on trade but fragmented on defense will find its commercial power leveraged against its security dependence, as is happening now.
Now, honestly, he said that incredibly, right? Because he's so right. And maybe as a quick refresher, he was talking about the competencies of the EU, and the EU can only really rule by itself or make legislation by itself without like the member states, stopping it or having a say or something like that or whatever. What I mean is, can only do it by itself in trade, in the customs union, in competitiveness, and one or two others. I think fisheries is another one, etc. So the EU by itself only has very, very little power. But with that little power, it's respected in the world. Eurozone, that's another one, monetary policy. So the euro is respected, it's and we can deal with other powers with that strongly. Trade is, etc. But we're not on foreign policy. And what Trump does so well is he uses our divisions in security and threatens us to leave support from Ukraine, for example, and uses trade as the counterbalance. If you don't do that, then we're going to mess you up with trade. So it creates a whole area of weakness. And I think Draghi put it very, very well, and that's a massive issue. And yeah, go ahead.
What competencies though would you want? I mean, you just talked about all the ones that we have now, right?
Yeah.
But which ones do you think is most important for EU unity, or what's missing that we don't have yet?
Yeah, exactly. So the way it works is you have exclusive competencies, which I just mentioned. Then you have shared competencies. So things like internal market, social policy, environment, consumer protection, transport, a whole long list. So here the countries and the EU can regulate. Then we have supporting competencies. Here it's mainly just the countries and the EU can support. And then we have some special competencies, and these are competences. And these are basically foreign policy. Right. So how this would work currently in the EU, foreign policy is basically decided by the European Council, which is the countries working together and hopefully coming to a compromise with one voice. And for me, of course, that is the big one. Right. Foreign policy really needs to move to the exclusive EU competences for the EU to have a voice in the world. Because if you don't have that, then we can't speak one voice on the global stage when it comes to defense issues like Ukraine, when it comes to sanctions, when it comes to EU missions and things like that. So that's the one I want to see in the exclusive competences. And what about you? Do you see any other ones that you would like to see in the exclusive EU competence?
Well, I don't want to be too nitpicky on some of these topics. I know federalists can differ wildly on what they want to see federalized, what they don't want to see federalized. But I think absolutely, I mean, foreign policy is almost obvious at this point. Wasn't obvious a few years ago. Had to push for it, but I think that it's very obvious now. I think there's a lot of financial things that we can create competencies on, shared competencies on, and then from there refine. Right? I think. The funding instrument, right? I forgot what's the funding instrument called, but the way that the EU is funded needs to be reformed on a yearly
100%.
basis.
Fiscal policy, dude. Fiscal
policy, yeah,
yeah, 100%. Yeah. Because now
insane.
the EU. I think 70% of the EU is financed via direct contributions from the member states, and I think. Yeah. Or it's 60%. Anyway, it's around there. And 30% is what you call their own resources. So money that the EU makes via tariffs. I think there's a VAT element too. I think so. And a couple more. But because so much of the EU is financed by the member states, it's completely dependent on the member states, meaning that it doesn't really represent, in my eyes, all the people, everyone in the EU. It basically represents the member states because follow the money, right? The member states pay. But if it had its own resources and was not so reliant on member state contributions, it could act more freely with what it does. So yeah, sorry, I can't believe I didn't mention that one. You're completely right. We need more methods for the EU to make its own resources.
To me, it's a second veto, right? It's a second veto, because you basically have so much leverage over the EU. If the EU can't even defend itself, and I mean that in every sense of the word or of the expression, it cannot defend itself. It cannot defend itself online, right? With media that's controlled by the US, and it also has prohibitive laws in place and structures in place to prevent it from creating biased opinions. The veto prevents it from defending itself once again, right? Because now countries can hold the whole EU hostage just with one country can just hold it hostage, right? That's Orban. And there's all these things that we built because we were too careful and we tried to do it step by step. But now they're really coming back and bite us. And so I think there's a lot to do there. And actually, one thing I was thinking about is this trade deal with the US, right? As you were just mentioning it there, that's, we got a trade deal with the US. That's not very, very good. I mean, it was very bad. It was basically just blackmail. Do you think we would have a better trade deal if we didn't have all these impasses there, if we had common security policy?
Yes, because Trump would have less leverage. Something that us Europeans naively thought is like, trade is a separate topic from foreign policy, from monetary policy, etc. It's all different. It's like a box. But it's not a box. What Trump does very well, to his credit, as I don't really like giving him credit, but what he does very well, he mixes it all up. So he mixes foreign policy with trade. So if you don't do me that favor on foreign policy, then I'm going to screw you on trade, right? And that's something that we're just not used to. And if, like you said, if we had a unified foreign policy where we're stronger defensively, had something more of a European army or army of Europeans or whatever you want to call it, then we'd have more leverage, right? Because we'd be able to protect ourselves. So yeah, 100%. I think the trade deal with the US would have been better if we had more competencies in the exclusive area for the EU. Yeah. And by the way, I saw this, I'm just looking at the chat a little bit, and I saw this person saying, I can't handle any more taxes. And I think that's quite interesting. Allowing the EU to collect more money by itself, not dependent on member states, doesn't have to mean taxes on the consumer, right? It can mean taxes on companies, on your American companies. Facebook, you want to operate here? Bam, you need to pay. At least pay your taxes, because they don't really at the moment. You can put it on trades, financial trades, like small little percentages that give money to the EU, and all of this stuff can add up. So yeah, it doesn't have to mean taxes. Fiscal policy on the EU level doesn't mean more taxes for the consumer.
I actually want to dig in more on that. I'm someone who's very hawkish on taxes as well. Certain taxes, I'm ready to have a discussion. But to be honest, I don't think that a federal tax, it's a controversial way to say it, will mean more taxes. I'll give the example of France, a country I know more about. if you have, for example, the retirement system, we have such a high level of tax for the retirement system. Why? Because the system is very, very bad. It's terrible. If we reform the system and we created a unified European market that had a strong return, then we created an investment level of return for those retirements, you would save already a lot of money for France. And so therefore, France would have to tax less, because now you don't have to pay for all of these pensioners, since you would have a European system that would create a stronger market with stronger returns. And so you can invest in that even if you keep it on a national level. And so therefore, France could then deduct that from its national tax, and then federal tax would be added somewhere else, reducing the whole tax load. Now, of course, that's idedaalistic, right?
It's very idealistic.
Exactly. But it's its own conversation, but it's to show that it's possible, and possible. Not next year, but it's possible, especially if we work towards it.
Let's cut that topic here. Let's quickly go to the chat, because we have a super chat. So let's ask that question. Thank you so much, Jakub, for your 100 Czech crowns. And his question is: first, we need to go back to the basics. Only when the majority of EU citizens feel like Europeans, just as the majority of US citizens feel like Americans, will we be truly strong. There's not really a question in that. It's more of a statement. Paul, before I give him my thoughts, do you have any thoughts on that?
He's right. And I think it's a self-feeding loop. If you share monetary policy, you share discussions. If you share discussions, you share identity. And if you share identity, then you feel like a European. We need to get into a loop here where we're talking about financial, monetary, foreign policy together, talking together, and not highlighting differences. Not to say, I want to do this and you want to do that. And France, you want to build the FCAS and you want to get the contract, and Germany, you don't want, right? So we need to get out of these discussions. We need to find commonalities, work on that, and that will create and reinforce its own identity. But I completely agree. I mean, European flags at the airport, in gyms, everywhere, right? Have a national anthem of Europe as much as possible to really get that pride going, I think is also very necessary. But I think it goes hand in hand. It's a chicken and the egg kind of problem. It's not A then B, I would say.
Yeah, and even just getting these topics on the agenda in like your talk shows, right? Because if I turn on a German talk show at night, in the evening, or a politics discussion, whatever, it's mainly like a lot of it is just local politics. I mean, now it's changing a little bit because of the crazy stuff going on around the world, but it's mainly local. And that's why someone like Draghi would be great to be, saying stuff like this, because it takes these topics and puts them in mainstream discussion so we can talk about it and see where we want to go. That's why I love these kind of speeches. And I wish some of our leaders would talk like Draghi would, just to get the discussion rolling, even though we know it might not happen for the next 3 years.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Let's continue. Otherwise, we're never going to get through this video.
Some will say that we should not act until our position is stronger, until we are more unified, until escalation is less costly. But this trade-off is illusory.
Jakob is answering your
It is
question.
only by moving that we create the conditions to act more decisively later. Unity does not precede action. It is forged by taking consequential decisions together, by the shared experience and solidarity they create, and by discovering that we can bear the result. Consider Greenland. The decision to resist rather than accommodate required Europe to carry out a genuine strategic assessment, to map our leverage, identify our tools, and think through the consequences of escalation. The willingness to act forced clarity about the capacity to act. And by standing together in the face of a direct threat, Europeans discovered a solidarity that had previously seemed out of reach. The shared resolve resonated with the public in ways that no summit communiqué could have achieved.
All right, Paul. I don't want to talk about Greenland again, to be honest, but we do have to cover this very quickly. So do you think that Greenland, so Trump pulling away from his Greenland ambitions for now, is a European success story? Do you think Europeans is actually why Trump backed down, or what's your view there?
It's part of the reason why. Look, a win is a win. We won on Greenland, right? A win is a win, and we win. They stopped talking about it for now, and we kind of got the message through, like, hey, don't mess with us. At the same time, while it's a win and we should celebrate our wins, and I don't want to be always a downer, right? That's often what I'm described to be, but we also need to look at the situation, right? We still don't have a European base in Greenland that's being discussed. We've kind of forgotten about it now. We're back to the old Trump strategy, seemingly. It's like words forgotten. We'll see, right? Of course, we've had this crisis. It's over. Now we move on to something else. But have we actually learned from this? We're going to see over the next few crises. So I wouldn't be celebratory just yet. However, I think we can see this as a win. Yeah, I mean, they're not in Greenland. They stopped talking about it. He went back. Epstein files got released. He's got more problems at home. But again, I want to wait. Yeah.
I quite like what Mesteru is saying in the chat. It's not a success story. It's a cautionary tale. I think it's a bit of both. It's definitely a cautionary tale, 100%. But I do think there's a bit of success there because I think Europeans did put troops, right? Not many. We're talking about like 20 or 25. But hey, at least it's something onto Greenland, right? And apparently what I read this morning is that the Danish troops that they had there, they were instructed to shoot if it came to an actual engagement. So I think the opportunity cost for Trump and his team got so high, right, that he's like, okay, I need to back down somehow. And we gave him the diplomatic route to do so via Rutte, right? Like him, hate him, whatever. But we did give him a diplomatic way out. Plus, of course, the stock market was down and public opinion was low about it in the US. So that definitely also had something to do with it. But yeah.
Yeah, but he's right. I mean, I would be careful. We haven't seen the full effect of Greenland yet on European and American diplomacy. And when I start seeing a real shift, one that is consistent, that is not just ass licking, then yeah, I'll change my opinion, I'd say.
All right. We have a super chat, so let's ask that question. Thank you so much for the £10, Owain. We really appreciate it. And his question is, or statement, what we're witnessing with US, China, and Russia carving up the world isn't a reassertion of the nation state, but rather the building of empires. Forget EU, cringe. We need a European empire. Discuss. Back to the Roman times, man. We need an empire and a Caesar, maybe even. Well, let's discuss, Paul. What do you think?
Look, EU cringe? No. EU
man,
not
when you
cringe.
have 3 beers, you definitely talk about stuff like this. I'm joking.
No.
Yeah, I know, I'm joking. Yeah.
Look, I mean, if he's referencing some kind of pro-European I don't know how to put this, like nationalism. Look, we can all do with more European pride. I'm not going to be out here and defend, rampant nationalism or dictatorship. I love democracy, and I don't know exactly what they're referencing in this chat. I would say the EU is a structure to build a foundation for greater cooperation. If it's too slow, we need to find any way to make it work, whether it's with the EU or not. E6, multi-tier EU, as long as we get something that works, that gets us respect on the world stage quickly, and that is democratic, respecting the rules of law, of course, then let's do it, right? If the EU is too slow, it's too slow.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't take the word empire in my mouth either. I think a lot of people in the chat know that I really, really do believe in a multi-speed Europe, that we're not going to be able to move at the same speed with all 27 members, especially with 1 or 2 of them not wanting any kind of integration, more the opposite. But we're going to get into that later a little bit. But yeah, we do need to do more, and we do need to find a way to move ahead, because even now, with all of these global issues, we're still moving too slow, if you ask me. Anyway, shall we continue to the next part of Draghi's speech, because now it gets quite interesting.
At the same time, building collective strength will not be the same for Europe as it has been for China, or now looks to be for the United States. The United States, in its current posture, seeks dominance together with partnership. China sustains its growth model by exporting its costs onto others. European integration is built differently, not on force, but common will, not on subjugation, but shared benefit. It is integration without subordination, vastly, vastly preferable but vastly more difficult. This demands a different approach. I've called it a pragmatic federalism.
He said it.
Pragmatic because we must take the steps that are currently possible, with the partners who are actually willing in the domains where progress can currently be made. But federalism, because the destination matters. Common action and the mutual trust it creates must eventually become the foundation for institutions with real decision-making power, institutions able to act decisively in all circumstances. This approach breaks the impasse we face today, and it does so without subordinating anyone. Member states opt in. The door remains open to others, but not to those who would undermine common purpose. We do not have to sacrifice our values to achieve power.
Yes.
The euro is the most successful example. Those who were willing went ahead, built common institutions with real authority, and through that shared commitment, forged a solidarity deeper than any treaty could have prescribed. And since then, 9 more countries have chosen to join. This would not be a
I'm going to pause it there for a second, Paul, because I mean, he's clearly talking about a multi-tier, multi-speed, whatever whatever you want to call it. I mean, let me just quote what he said. Member states opt in. The door remains open to others, but not those who would undermine the common purpose. So, I mean, would you agree? This sounds very much like a how would you call a multi-speedy? What do you prefer? Multi-tier, multi-speed? What's the naming here?
I like multi-speed, but multi-tier is very good as well. Yeah, it's obvious, right? I think the most pressing example of this is Ukraine, which for economic reasons, integrating into all of our markets is going to be very, very difficult in terms of the grain production, but also in terms of just literally the feasibility of getting everyone to agree on Ukraine joining, as well as a new veto. But we need them in our military sphere. I mean, it's absolutely critical. The UK, we need them in our economic sphere. They're a massive, massive, massive economic power. We need that. We need that in our European circle, right?
True. But Paul, let me take a step back, right? Because last week there was this big thing where Lars Klingbeil, he's a German finance minister, or he's the German finance minister, and he proposed, or he's actually implementing this group of E6, right? So he basically chose the 6 biggest economies of Europe. It wasn't any more scientific than that, which is, let me quickly say, Germany, France, the Netherlands, Poland, Spain, and Italy. So those 6 countries. And they are now the E6, and they're going to move forward with the Capital Markets Union, with strengthening the euro, and 1 or 2 other topics that I can't think of at the top of my head. But basically starting to create a multi-speed Europe already. Now, let me openly ask you, do you think that's a good thing, the way he chose those countries and wants to go ahead?
I think that the countries that want to form a closer alliance need to get together on perhaps a bilateral basis and really get these things sorted, and then we discuss who wants to join. But in fact, I would put it more in this way, right? We need integration to happen. And I think when it happens, it will prove to be quite efficient, quite good, but it will also take time to set up. So we need a group of countries initially, and I actually don't care which group of countries this is, to come together, talk, and find a way to streamline decisions in a way that won't block anyone. And once that structure is put in place, find a way to integrate new countries without having veto.
Exactly.
That's what we need.
For me, that's the critical piece. Because what I worry about, and rightly so, I had a couple of discussions on Reddit today, actually, and discussions were around like, it's already, you're creating the big countries versus the small ones, the core versus periphery. And there was one person that said, my country, my small country, has done so much, never vetoed anything in the EU. I think it was Croatia. I'm not sure. But one of the people commenting. And now we're getting kind of like pushed aside for these big E6 to go ahead and leave us behind. So I think the critical piece here is I don't see a problem with countries moving ahead, but the door has to always remain open for all of the other EU countries that want to join that and are willing to join it and see a benefit in joining it, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
I mean, exactly. It will prove to be very efficient once we have it in place. We just need to prove it. But if we start saying, we want Germany, Netherlands, France, right, and then actually let's think about every single country.
Yeah,
it's not.
But wouldn't it be, sorry to interrupt you, Paul, but wouldn't it just be easier? Why doesn't one country say, we want a unified EU policy? Who wants to join? And then see 6-7 countries. Okay, you have to give up your veto, and then those go ahead. Okay, I'm oversimplifying, but wouldn't that be the best way to do it? I don't know.
This is the problem I see. This is why I think we need a bit of setup, because if you say, hey, I'm going to build a unified economic policy, right? Then maybe France, who is in high debt, might go ahead and say, yeah, let's do it, right? Or a military France might be, let's do it, right? And Poland will say yes, but then maybe a country like Germany will say no. So some topics you'll get like more yeses than nos, and some other topics you'll get other yeses and nos. So how do you find a group of even 3 countries? You need 3 really. You can't, or at least 2 countries to say, let's do this together on these frameworks, and then invite people step by step. Yeah. That's what we need, I'd say.
I mean, you can also do it via policy area, right? I mean, that's what we've been doing in EU the whole time. The Eurozone started with 11 countries, went up. The Schengen area started with X countries, not sure. And then more and more countries joined, right?
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Then you have the single market. I'm not sure about that, but was everyone involved in the single market from the start? I'm not sure. But there's like different policy areas that can grow, right? Start with a couple and then move to more. We could do the same with defense. Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, integrate your armies. Or even with Germany. 4 countries integrate their armies, and then more can join in the future. Yeah,
that's right. Actually, you could probably do it by area, and then trying to federalize that way. That would also work, but it would take a lot of time to discuss and set up.
Yeah. Quickly go to the chat. Michael Leturco 6430. Thank you so much for your €2. We really appreciate it. Helps us a lot. And the next super chat here from Niles Cooper, €2. When do we get our own EU tube? I think there is already a European variant, right? For YouTube. Was it PeerTube? Is it called? I think.
I don't know.
I know. We need to. Yeah. To be fair, we need to look into it. There's of course nothing that's as big as YouTube, but we definitely would love to have a European variant. So we need to look into it.
There was what Daily Motion? It's French. I don't know if it's still used, to be honest.
Yeah. There are some great other questions, but let's continue watching a little bit, and then I'll answer them from the chat. So we'll continue to the video.
Great path. As Schuman said in 1950, Europe will not be made all at once. Not all countries will join every initiative from the outset, whether in energy, technology, defense, or external policy. But every step must remain anchored in the goal, not looser cooperation, but a genuine federation. Some may delude themselves that the world hasn't really changed, or that geography makes them immune. Some may believe that surrendering economic independence, or even territory, doesn't threaten their ability to preserve the values that define us. But that should not stop the more clear-sighted from forging ahead. We are all in the same position of vulnerability, whether we see it yet or not. The old divisions that paralyzed us have been overtaken by a common threat. But threat alone will not sustain us. What began in fear must continue in hope. As we act together, we will rediscover something that has long been dormant: our pride, our self-confidence, our belief in our future. And on that foundation, Europe will be built. Thank you.
Damn, Draghi. I'm touched. I mean, that was a beautiful end. Discover our pride, our self-confidence, and our belief in our future. Anyway, Paul, what do you think? What do you think of his speech?
What a fantastic speech. I wish it was directly streamed to every single one of our policy leaders and presidents and prime ministers in the EU now, right? This is very, very much needed. It's coming from a very smart man who's been respected in his domain, even by Eurosceptics. Look, it's the logical next step, and it's one that we've been talking for a very long time. And I think it was taboo for a very long time. I don't think Draghi got these ideas, last week. I think he's always known these things, and as they become, prevalent in the discourse, for all of you that are watching our channel, for all of you who are discussing it online, for everyone who's posting, who's working towards the European project, I think it's something that's growing, and while it grows in the public discourse, it's also going to grow in the private political discourse. So I think what he did was fantastic.
Yeah, just a quick reminder for the chat. So Draghi doesn't actually, I might be mistaken, but doesn't really have any official role at the moment in the EU. He used to be the Prime Minister of Italy, and he used to be the President of the Central Bank, I think. Those are his two prominent roles. So he's definitely well respected. And I'm not sure how it is in France, but his Draghi report of how making us competitive again is like a massive thing in German media and throughout Europe, really. So he's definitely a very respected person. One of the most respected people I know that came out for a European federation. So definitely interesting. I think it's an interesting comment here. There's a super chat. We'll come to you in a minute. But quickly, Yamara said, Draghi must be elected president. And it's quite interesting because he was on the cards 2 years ago, but he's 78 now. I mean, I'm not sure if that's, in 3 years, he'd be 81. So it might be quite old to become the EU Commission president, or he might be quite old. So I'm not sure if that would be realistic. But he definitely was in conversation before. I mean, would you prefer seeing Draghi over Ursula von der Leyen, Paul?
I would.
I love the honesty. I love it. Yeah.
no hate towards Ursula. No hate towards Ursula at all. I don't agree with everything she does, but I think you need someone strong. I think we have every single tool necessary to make the EU stronger. And yes, we have a lot of rules. Yes, we have a lot of constraints. Yes, we have the veto. But I bet you put a European Commission president tomorrow who wants federalism, or at least who is willing to work towards a better European entity that actually works on the global stage, they will push reforms, they will get things done, and they will really just push the system so that it can actually reform. Because right now, we say, oh, the Commission has no power, the Parliament has no power. Of course, they don't have any institutional power, but they're listened to. Draghi is the proof of that. He's just one man who doesn't even have a job. Sorry, no hate to Draghi, but he's just a public spokesperson, right? He doesn't have a job at the Commission. That's what I mean, by the way. I love Draghi. That sounded very rude.
Yeah. I mean, he does have a lot of speaking jobs.
Exactly. Yeah. But, and he made the reports. And so I think people like Draghi need to be listened to. And if you have someone who's got energy and motivation to change things, I think things will change. Yes, it might not be effective, but what Ursula von der Leyen right now is doing is she is reactive. She is not proactive, and you need someone that is proactive. What about you, Lambertus? What do you think?
Yeah, man, I agree. I remember when I was creating videos about the election a year and a half ago, and I was looking at Draghi because I was looking at the potential Commission presidents, and I was looking at Draghi. I was like, wow, this guy's quite impressive. And I actually, I'm gonna admit, I was a fan of von der Leyen. I thought she did a okay job in her first 5 years, with some massive exceptions. But so it was really nice to see Draghi and his report cards, his CV. And yeah, I mean, I think for European unity and in terms of bold ideas, I think he would have been great. He would have been great. But let's go for some of the chats. So we have a super chat here from Owain YTC, £10 again. Thank you so much. He says, for the EU to be a world power, it needs visionary ideas. One idea would be to use land reclamation techniques to raise the Dogger Bank from the North Sea. I think he means land reclamation. Dogger Bank would be a great addition to the EU. Discuss. I'm not sure what should be
discussed. Eurobonds. That's how we finance it. No. Yeah. I don't know what to say.
No, I don't. I'm sorry, Owen. I know very little about this. I can't really say a lot about it. I'm not sure that land reclamation at this moment in time is what we need. But yeah, thank you for your tip though. And Adrian Zikowski 19 gave us 3 PLN. So thank you very much for that super chat. And if there's any questions, make sure you do tag us in the chat so that we can answer them. So Paul, what's the realistic way forward? So as some of the people in the chat have said, oh yeah, it's all talk, which it is. Is there anything you can see in the next months or half year of how this can or is being pushed forward, or is it indeed just talk? It's a difficult question, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely talk for now, right? We've had this whole Greenland episode. We have some very, very smart people like Draghi come out and talk. He's done the report now. He's doing some speeches. He's listened to. It's on the news. I think what you need now is, and this refers back to another comment we got. We need a European identity. That's to build a European identity. But more than that, we need to come up together, right? If it's not through an EU institution, then somewhere else. And we need to say, okay, how are we going to deal with foreign policy, especially the military, which is the most pressing issue, I think, at the moment, right? With NATO, in my opinion, which is absolutely just died, really, since Trump has come to power and who has said all these things about Europe. And so I think that's the first step. And I'm not seeing that much of that at the moment. There's some talk. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of talk and a lot of
that is how it starts, right? I mean,
but there's still nothing, right?
Yeah, true.
Except coalition of the willing, which you talked about recently. I mean, well, what do you think? What's the first step that we have to take? Because I've got many that we should take, but none are being taken at the moment.
Okay, so I've been doing the channel for 4 years, right? The EU Made Simple channel, and the talk in the last couple of months about this has been so much stronger and more than literally the whole 4 years before that. I wouldn't say combined, but definitely has been no period. And what do I mean by this? I mean, start of this month, the Commissioner for Defense comes out and says we need a 100,000 strong EU army. A couple months before that, Pedro Sanchez mentioned we need a European army. I think it was reiterated again this month. Last week, Manfred Weber, the strongest politician in the European Parliament, right? He's the head of the EPP group, came out and said, we need EU reform. We need a European army. We need to remove the veto. We need to elect one European president, not the council president, not the commission president. We need one. You know, these are big statements from a big politician in the European Parliament. And now we have Draghi, who's well respected, saying we need a federal EU. Yes, you're right. It is all talk. But the amount of talk, it keeps accelerating to some extent, if you ask me. So how much longer until maybe one of the big politicians, a leader of a country, will stand up and actually say, actually, I support that too, because maybe they have nothing more to lose. Macron, Merz, you know, in their own countries, you know. So that's, again, I'm always the optimistic side of things. I know you're a bit more pessimistic, but it does start with talk. And we're talking about in our live stream, and maybe it goes into more formats, and that will be a start.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the amount of discussion that is happening on this sort of scale is just massive. I mean, just think about even 2 years ago, would we even be talking about federalizing, you know, and 500 people watching us talk about federalizing? It's not something that was ever even considered possible before. And then it was discussed, and now it's like, okay, well, how do we do this? And so, in a sense, you are right. I hope that Macron will kind of be the driver with that. We've got D66 in the Netherlands, but we also have Pedro Sanchez, as you just mentioned. We have Tusk, which is aligned. Merz, we will see. But you have a lot of people that are asking these questions, and I think, you know, as you said before, multi-tier EU will make that process a lot smoother. And not only smoother, but it will help us kind of define what we want the EU to look like after we've done this federalization, because we probably don't want to federalize everything, obviously. But there are definitely some things like the army and the military, which are absolutely essential, which are needed now. And the fact that these discussions are happening is a good first step. Now we need some action. And I think if it happens, it's this year, maybe next, the year after, but the window is small, right? So these steps need to be taken now and urgently. So I'm hoping that will happen.
I think there's another interesting, maybe one of the final questions of the live stream from Vasilev Rex. His question is, what's the official language of a federal EU? English, even when the UK is out, or French, or German? Or do we have AI translators in our brains? Okay, so languages. It is an issue, right? Do you think it is an issue in this whole federation? What will be my God, let me simplify. What will be the official language if a potential federation were to come?
I think about India, right? It has loads and loads of languages. What are its official languages? Hindi, English, boom.
Yeah.
Right. So look, yes, of course, English. Ooh, it's the American language. It's not ideal, but English is an official language in Ireland, for example, which is in
And
the
in
EU.
Malta also.
And in Malta, exactly. So it's not unprecedented. You go anywhere in Europe, you have probably at least 50% of the population that speaks English. Is it perfect? No. Am I going to start forcing every European to speak French or German? I think that's a terrible idea. So,
I hate to have to keep picking on the French, man, because you're probably the most relaxed French person when it comes to this that I know. It's probably because your English is so good. That's probably why you have that opinion. Yeah.
Maybe. I don't want to anger any French viewers here, so I'm gonna not say too much. But yeah, I'm happy not to have a very French accent. I mean, except Macron's when he's got his sunglasses on and he has got a French accent and he looks very cool. But
I think you mentioned it. I think you can have like multiple languages. Most Europeans speak multiple languages anyway.
Absolutely.
Right? So
absolutely.
English can be our language that we have in common across the continent. And actually, probably I saw in the comments too, it might actually be a good thing that it's not the language of one of the big countries because of, rivalries and whatever.
Of course.
Yeah. So I think it's actually good that it might be English. And then you have your second local language, or maybe even a third local language. It's you have multiple identities. You can feel at home with different cultures and different languages, right? I mean, it'd be very weird for me to talk English with my family because that's Dutch, but it would be equally weird to talk Dutch here with you, if you know what I mean. There's different environments and different languages that you can, that you can use and talk about.
I think most Europeans are bilingual anyway, right? Everyone learns English because it's become the predominant language. Yeah, I think English is. I think it's. Do they already have official languages in the EU? I'm not even sure.
24.
Now. I feel
they
like
have 24 official languages.
Yeah,
and
24 YouTube channels now.
Yeah, that's the plan. That was our original plan. 24 YouTube channels for all the languages that there are in the EU. By the way, that's a big call out to everyone in the chat. So a couple of things, we need to do some marketing now. But very quickly, we have lots of different language channels. For example, Paul right here, he's French. He's got a French channel, so check it out. And also there's the German channel if you're German, and a Romanian channel if you're Romanian. If you want to get more, local content, that would be great for you to do. And also we have a Discord. 2 Discord channels, one where we talk about EU politics all day, every day, and another one about basically role-playing. We have a parliament, we have a prime minister, etc., and you can role-play different parties, etc. So very cool. And lastly, of course, we have our Patreon. I saw someone join at the start. Sorry, I didn't see your name, but thank you so much for joining, and anyone that really wants to support us, please to go on Patreon. And let's go for the final 2 questions of the day. We have another. Wayne tipped £20. Jeez, man. Thank you so much. That's really, really generous. He wrote, EU should restore its monarchies. My God, man. Bourbons in France. Hohenzollerns in DE. Savoys in Italy. Elective monarchy for Europe. Trump, Xi don't respect EU Commission President. Only a Napoleonic figure as EU head can command authority. I disagree. I don't know about you, Paul, but...
I love democracy. I don't want to go back to a monarchy. Even a representative monarchy like the UK is not something I really agree with. Well, I don't hate the monarchy in the UK. I think it's a lot of money for, especially when it's not already established. So
man, we have a king in Holland, man. You better like him.
Oh yeah, sorry. We chopped our king's head off a couple hundred years ago, and we still haven't forgotten that. So I don't think king would be very popular in France, to be honest with you.
I get that. I get that. It does have some nice cultural elements to it. I mean, I always have a warm fuzzy feeling when I see the king do something funny. No,
but I don't hate monarchy or anything like that. I just think it's a lot of money for countries that have already removed monarchies, and I just don't really see the point in today's day and age, especially for those that don't have it anymore. But for the Dutch and for the UK, it's very prestigious, and why not?
Yeah, Fabricio in the chat is even saying, "You're really asking what a French thinks of a monarchy?" Yes, I am. Oh, I love it. All right, Paul. Awesome live stream. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Probably next week, right, Paul? Monday, Tuesday, something like that.
Next week.
Yeah. And if you have some cool topics, let us know on our Discord or comments. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, I need to. Here we go. Now I got it.